Hello, everyone, and welcome to Reclaiming Fertility Joy, Healing the Broken Spirit of Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. I am your host, Corey Ray Kovacs, registered nurse and women's wellness mentor and educator. I am so excited to introduce you to this amazing human being that I have gotten to know. She is a fellow sister and just all around badass chick. This is Talia LeBlanc. Thank you so much for joining us today, Talia. So happy you're here.
I am so excited to be here. Hello to everybody out there. And I am so glad that you are tuning in because this is such an important conversation. Super excited.
Yes. Okay. So, Talia, like I said, she is a fellow PCOS sister. She's also an entrepreneur and founder of the PCOS Baddie Club. I have found that her wit and candor on her Instagram and her community gives voice to those living life with PCOS. You know, those of us that haven't had a voice. She is out there sharing and being your amazing self. So yes, I'm so happy to have you here. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about your mission in PCOS Baddie Club. Where did it start and what is this all about?
Yeah, so I started creating content like on TikTok because I had felt like more comfortable there because it just felt like it was a place you could just throw whatever out. And I was like, I'm going to just share something that's kind of like scary that I've never posted before. And it was about my facial hair. So I posted the video. It went mega viral. All these people were like, all these women were like, oh my God, I relate. Like, I've never seen this before. Like, anyone talk about this online. So then I created a series after a few of like my supporters were like, oh, okay, baddie. Okay, I see you with the PCOS baddie. And I was like, I should make the PCOS baddie club. Like, we should be a club where everybody and just feels, because I feel like a big part of PCOS is that we tend to feel unfeminine, we tend to feel unwanted, we tend to feel all the things that are not feeling like a baddie. And I know baddie is kind of like a more recent term and like, you know, in the internet world, but that's kind of what I wanted it to embody. I wanted women to come in and like feel like their most baddie self, like no matter what symptom they had, whether you have like the hair loss or the overgrowth of hair, if you deal with acne or the weight, whatever it is, I wanted you to feel that way. And the Baddie Club on Instagram, I wanted the page to be a little bit different because I was looking at a lot of other PCOS pages and they were all, you know, very, you know, educational and informative and inspirational. And I love all those things. And those things are incorporated into the PCOS Baddie Club. But I wanted it to be more raw and real. Like, let's be freaking honest. Like, there are times that I am going to have a nightstand full of crap next to me because I'm snacking in the middle of the night because that day I didn't have a good day and I ended up, you know, snacking or binging. And I wanted to be a real, raw, honest conversation. And I want to talk about the things that people don't talk about online. Like they just don't talk about taboo or well, we're only supposed to be better. And it's like, okay, but we're not going to be perfect. So why don't we can we all just relate for a second and like, you know, let's be real. So
I love this so much because you literally are like living from this place and of authenticity. And that to me is what we need right now. We need authenticity in not only like in the PCOS space, but in all the spaces, to be honest.
Honestly.
Like, I mean, okay, so that was one of the first things when I came across your IG was I think it was one of your reels about facial hair. And I was like, yes, this is a sister that we in this space because we are going through stuff. Everybody has this unique line of challenges that we have. So you talk about your hirsutism. So mine is the opposite. I have hair loss. Like, I mean, I have like my part right here. I've lost so much. I mean, like this right here. It's like that has like changed how I wear my hair, how I feel about my face. Like I already have a widow's peak and got made fun of like so much as a kid. Yeah. You know, I pull my hair back in a ponytail. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so like yeah, I mean, I have, it's just interesting, like the acne and the things that like, and then the weight gain. And I, you know, I struggled with that my whole time I was in the military. Literally everybody called me lazy, called me fat, called me, you know, pizza face, called me all kinds of stuff. And it's like,
Oh,
these
wow.
are, this is my life, you know, and this is me. And I didn't know I had PCOS at the time. I didn't know until a decade later that that's what was going on. So I thought it was just me. And I took it like there was something wrong with me. And that's what I love about you and how you talk about stuff is like, there's, it's not, we put so much blame and shame and guilt on upon of ourselves. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
the
I
less,
think it's like how you said, like, there's no, there, you feel like it's only you, like it's your fault, or like, man, I'm the only girl that grows facial hair. I'm the only girl that, I mean, I have chest hair. I mean, I started documenting that because I've been getting like laser and electrolysis and going through the entire journey of like telling people like, hey, some things are just not going to work for us, and we need to like, there just needs to be more honesty in the space, because one, growing up, especially in social media, everything was so curated and perfect. So I really thought, I was like, oh my gosh, I really must be a crazy
yeah,
oddball, like anomaly, like I'm
right,
the only girl that deals with this. And
right.
so many women are the same until they see that person. They're like, oh my God, like
Oh my God,
me
that's me.
too.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that especially with hirsutism, I mean, this is such, you know, as a healthcare professional, I mean, like I said, like personally, this isn't like the big strong thing I deal with, but professionally, it's, you know, there's so much. First off, it's way more common in PCOS than what people think, right? It's
Right.
way more common in terms of and especially in like we kind of discussed earlier, like in different ethnicities. So we definitely see it in the Hispanic community and other women of color. It's in South Asia. Like there is a much larger occurrence of hirsutism in
Mhm.
those specific ethnic groups, and I find that very interesting that we don't, you know, again, it's just like not something we talk about. We feel really like less than a woman and
It's
not pretty if,
yeah,
yeah, if we have to shave. And that's, quite frankly, it's BS. It's because it's
true
not.
facts.
That doesn't define us. It doesn't. And that's, I love that you're getting your message out. So when were you first diagnosed with PCOS?
Ooh, let me tell you real quick.
Let's
So
hear that
my whole life, I had like, I got my period when I was 11 for the first
story.
time, and I had pretty heavy periods, like normal to heavy periods. And from the very beginning, it would I never had a period monthly. It was maybe like every 2 months, every 3 months, and then as I got older, it got worse and worse and worse. Now
Further
at
out.
16, oh my God, at 16, I didn't get a period for 9 months. I was like, what is going on? My dad was a pediatrician, mind you. Like, you know, he was in the medical field. Like, I would go to his clinic, I would work in the summers, and I would ask his doctor friends and everyone, and I'd be like, hey, like, do you guys have, and I used to call it Picos back then because I didn't really know what it was. And I was like,
Right.
is it Picos? And they're like, they would look at me because I was EDP. I still didn't struggle with my weight at the time. It was just
Mhm.
my periods, and I would get a chin hair here and there. My mom would be like, oh, we're Dominican. So like, you know, all the women in my family have chin hairs and whatever. Likely we all
Mhm.
had PCOS and nobody knew it. But
Mhm.
I kept advocating for, and asking, they're like, you don't look like you have PCOS. You're not big. Like, you're supposed to be this like big overweight person, and
Oh,
you don't have
wow.
PCOS. Oh, okay. But it was just in the back of my mind. And then I started doing fitness competitions. And
Mhm.
when in my early 20s, like at 20 years old to about 27. And in that year, me and all my teammates, I lost the weight the slowest. Every single time I would have to start months before they started
Mhm.
preparing for a show, because it would take me so much longer. And I didn't understand why, but I was just like, man, I just feel like I have PCOS, but nobody will diagnose me. Nobody will listen to me. And then I went through so many different doctors. Blood works was normal. Everything, nothing. I was overweight, but I wasn't, you know, sometimes I
Mhm.
would be in the obese range. Everything, I mean, textbook
Yeah.
thing that you hear. And then finally in 2020, I'm searching for a doctor because I had just left my previous doctor, who was a white male, who ended up actually what's it called? He ended up retiring that year.
Mhm.
So I think he was already over it, because by the time that he was like with me, he would never answer my questions. He would be dismissive. He would be like, ah, whatever. And I'd be like, what the heck is going on? So then I find this doctor. Her name is Dr. Juanita Crable, and she is a local. She is a Black woman who also has PCOS,
Mm.
and everybody recommending her to me because I kept searching online. And I was like, "Can somebody recommend me anybody that will diagnose me with PCOS if I really strongly believe that I have it?" I go to her, I tell her my symptoms. She didn't do anything else. I told her I have facial hair in excess. I showed her a picture. And because of course I'm like shaven to my doctor, I'm not gonna walk out with all the hair. And
Right.
then I was like, I haven't had a period since last year. And then what was my other one? I forget. I had three. I had three out of the whatever, out of the four symptoms that they diagnosed you. And then she was like, "Yeah, you absolutely have
Yeah.
PCOS." And I walk out, or she walks out. I burst into tears. I was like, "Oh my God, finally somebody listened to me. Like it's documented on paper that I have PCOS." Like,
That
and it took
weight
10 years.
that lifts off
Yeah.
once you finally, it's not like you're seeking, it's not like you're trying to make something wrong, but at the deep, in your jellies, that there is something going on with your health. And you come to
Yeah.
these doctors and you tell them, like, I have this, I have this, I have this, and something is going on. And it's just, it's so
Very,
frustrating to see the dismissal, the
yeah.
automatic dismissal of what's going on. And it's not like, I don't know if it's stress, time, the mental, like, kind of how the systemic kind of ideas about how women are treated in healthcare, or women of color treated in healthcare. I don't know, but it's all of it. Maybe it's all of it. It's a
Yeah.
it's not one doctor's problem. It's a system problem.
Absolutely. And I get so many girls that comment on my videos, and I almost sometimes chuckle because they'll be like, "Oh my God, I have so much facial hair. Like I never get my period, but I don't have PCOS though." Cause I have never been, no, every doctor has told me that I'm fine. And in my mind, I'm like, "Sis, you probably do have PCOS. You just probably don't know that you do." And
Well,
it's okay. And it's some girls like, "Well, I don't have it." And I'm like, and they feel like all proud and stuff, but I do have this, this, and this. And I'm like, you should probably get yourself checked
this
because
is this is the yes, because I mean, the interesting thing, even if you look at the Rotterdam criteria, which is what you're talking about right now, the three different criterias for diagnosing. For those of us that are listeners, all right, I'll kind of put my little nurse hat on for a second. So the Rotterdam criteria is kind of considered the Western gold standard for diagnosing PCOS. And it basically, you only have to meet two of the three criteria. So you either have to have high androgens in your labs, or evidence of high androgens, which is hirsutism is the big one. There's also some other indications, difficulty losing weight, and hair loss and things like that. So that high androgens, um, polycystic ovaries on an ultrasound, and the third criteria is, wow,
that's why
okay.
the lack of period.
Oh, your periods. Yeah, irregular or
Yeah.
absent periods. So you only have to
Yeah.
meet two of the three criteria in order to be diagnosed with PCOS. Now, of course, these new guidelines that just came out a couple weeks ago are shifting to more of the other set of criteria, which is you basically have to have all three, or much higher on this androgen aspect than anything else. So you have, but these the diagnosis is really important, because then that at least gives you this peace that you can start making changes for your health and making changes for yourself, and also awareness that you have increased risks of all these other things that could happen later on in life.
Yeah.
Increased risk of type 2 diabetes, increased risk of insulin resistance, of stroke and heart condition, cardiovascular problems and things like that. So even if you get diagnosed at 17 or 20 or 25, or I was 29 or 28 when I got diagnosed. So I mean, this early stuff, and the problem is that we have these diagnoses. So if you get diagnosed, then what? And
Right.
so, like, where in your journey, like, once you got diagnosed, where did it go from there?
So once I got diagnosed, my doctor, I won't lie, at first she was just very like, "Well, like these are the medications, like, metformin. Do you want to try spironolactone, or do you want to try this or that?" And I was like, I wasn't really a huge fan of like just pumping myself with medicine. So I was like, let me just, I've never tried to like heal myself naturally. Let me just try. Let me just try. And then if it doesn't work, then, you know, my dad was a doctor. I believe in medicine. I do believe that there is a time and a place for medicine, and it can definitely
Absolutely.
be helpful. Um, Even now, for example, I'm on tirzepatide right now.
Hmm.
I'm on a GLP-1 because when I did my labs multiple times last year, I think I did them twice. I was pre-diabetic. I was already like right. I was at the very beginning, but I was pre-diabetic. I was struggling so bad to lose weight. Like I felt like I did everything and I couldn't get the weight down. So I was like, all right, well, let me just try this. So at the beginning of the year, I started with semaglutide, and
Hmm.
then a few months, my A1C went down. My insulin resistance has been a lot better, and it's kind of like to me, it's been like a life-changing medication to me, because I feel like I've never felt, you don't realize how much food noise and the cravings, and like you just feel crazy, and you feel like you're like, oh my God, like I just must be like the laziest piece of crap with no type of discipline ever. Like, what is going on? And I've had to do different things. I've had to up my supplements. Like, I need to make sure that I'm getting in my omegas, my berberine, my ovositol, my
Hmm.
all the things that I know that are going to help me. But I wouldn't have known had I not kept advocating for myself, and had I not actually like advocated to get more labs done. And actually, me being an influencer definitely helped me a lot, I will say. And I'm very privileged in that way, because I've been able to partner with companies. I have partnered with a company called Lara Health. They are
Yeah.
a platform, and they focus on PCOS only, and PCOS, like women's health. And they basically were like, hey, we want to partner with you. We want to be able to do your lab work. We want to like just have a whole comprehensive thing with you. I found out that my prolactin levels were super high.
Wow.
And that was a big reason why I was probably not getting my period, because my body was thinking that I'm lactating and
Yeah.
that I'm pregnant, or that I
Right.
just had a baby or something. And it's like, no, like I've never even been close to conceiving in my life, I don't think, because that's something that I struggle with, because I don't ovulate, because I don't get a period. So it's just been such a crazy journey. From the day that I found out, I was already in the midst of being an influencer, being a content creator. So then I had all these people, I was sharing my story so transparently that I had all these companies like, hey, we want to work with you. Like, we want to show people in real time how we diagnose people and how we do our care team and all that stuff. So it's been a relatively, really, really positive journey for me, because I feel like the hardest part was like getting diagnosed and just like finding out, and then really digging deep into my labs to know what exactly is causing all of this. So insulin resistance was super high. I mean, I was already pre-diabetic. I was already
Right.
like going in that direction. My prolactin levels were high. My vitamin D was super low. Like I had high cholesterol. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And I'm working towards that. So I'm not perfect everywhere yet, but
Right.
it's getting. But that was the hardest part.
Getting that diagnosis and advocating for yourself is one of the biggest pieces, because even once you get diagnosed, which this is like, I got diagnosed because I was trying to get pregnant. That's how my diagnosis came about. And so I didn't have all this like build up. It was basically like, hey, you've got PCOS, here's medications to get you pregnant. And then I got pregnant, and then I got pregnant. Eventually, it took me 2 years. And so eventually,
Wow.
once I got through that whole pipeline, but nobody ever talked to me about lifestyle changes. They told me to quit smoking and lose weight. Because that was my vice. Is, I was a sailor and, bored and
Right.
things like that. And so, but that was it. And so it even afterwards, right? So after I had my daughter, I didn't have the support that I needed in terms of like nutrition, diet, or anything until I went to nursing school. I had to go get a bachelor's degree to even really dive into this. And that's insane. That's absolutely insane. And it
Yeah.
should not be like that. We, which is why we're, sitting here talking with all of these amazing listeners here, is that like, if you feel like you've been alone, there is so many resources out there to help you work on your lifestyle and support you. There's medications out there, there's lifestyle changes. You have the ability to make the changes and to get the support that you need, but you have to speak up. You
Right.
have to speak up. And
Mm-hmm.
you how many doctors do you think you went through before you finally were able to get diagnosed?
Oh my gosh. I mean, probably five or six. Like just the ones that I was around because my
Mhm.
dad was a doctor, so I had access to so many doctors. I would ask any of them, like, "Hey, do you know?" And then they'd be like, they would just look at me and be like, "No, you don't have that." And I'm like, "That's all you're gonna do? Like, you're not gonna ask me? You're just gonna assume that I don't have it just because of what I outwardly look at?" And that's why, like, sometimes I even think, that's why I always advocate for all of us sharing as much as we can. I know it can
Yeah.
be really scary, and I know that
Yeah.
not everyone is cut out to be a content creator or an influencer because it is a lot to share all your personal stuff
Yeah.
to the world, because anything that you share on the internet, you give people permission to have an opinion on. And that can be very, very scary. And trust me, I've gone, I have over like 30 million views across all my platforms. And that's a lot of eyes and a lot of opinions. And it can get kind of
Mhm.
crazy. And it may not be the best thing for everyone's mental health. However, if we all just, that's why I created things like the PCOS Baddie Club private Facebook group, for example. I wanted to create a space that nobody, it's just us
Yeah.
here. Like, we can share, because there could be women in this group or women listening, like your listeners right now, like, that may have never been able to speak about any of the symptoms that they've experienced because they're so ashamed, and they've never known anybody in their real life. They've never seen anybody online talk about it. So you feel so ostracized, so alone, and you get so afraid to talk that then you don't know how to speak up at the doctors. But if you are in communities and in spaces where everyone is like sharing their experience, I had in particular one video where it was a trend that I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be
Right.
violet. Guys, that video, I shared basically the whole story that I shared, how I went so much time without a period, how I kept asking doctors, how I finally got diagnosed at age 29. I think you and I are like, got diagnosed around the same time in
Yeah.
our lives. And so many people related to the story about how long it took them to get diagnosed, doctors not listening to them, their symptoms. And I had so many people be like, "Oh my God, now I can take this to my doctor. I'm literally going to show them this video." And it's like, that's powerful that everyone is like,
It
okay, like,
is.
we
Being
relate.
Yes, being vulnerable is powerful. It is medicine to our current life. Is being open with our selves, our stories, because when we are able to come out and we shine our light or we share our vulnerable challenges, then that gives somebody else bravery, courage to be able to do the same so they can advocate for themselves. Ah,
Exactly. That's the goal.
this is the goal. This is honestly, like, you have taken upon yourself to make this your mission, is to give women the courage that they need to go and talk to their doctors, and don't stop. Like, don't stop until you find your answers, or until you find the doctor that fits your values. And that may mean too that you might have to step out of the, kind of Western conventional allopathic route too. You might have to go find a functional medicine doctor or a naturopathic doctor, or there might be other modalities here. And that's, another one of those reasons why we have this community here, because it's important. Your health is important. Your life and your livelihood, your quality of life is important. It's all important.
Yeah. And you don't have to wait to be to try to get pregnant. I think a lot of the times women as a whole too, like, we put like, terms like motherhood or like marriage, like, you go, "Oh, I just want to go get myself checked to make sure I'm all good before." I've had people like, "I'm about to get married, I want to make sure I'm all healthy and everything," or, "I'm about to start trying to have a baby, I want to make sure I'm all healthy and everything." Great, those are great things to do. But I want us to step away from the fact that, like, we are more than just mothers or wives. Like, we are women, and your health should come before any of those titles. Like, just for yourself, like, to peace of
Yeah.
mind for your, like, everything doesn't have to be attached to something else. Like, it's crazy that you had to find out that you had PCOS when you were trying to get pregnant. Like, and on top of the fact, also, a lot of people don't talk about that PCOS is also a metabolic issue,
Yeah.
not just a hormonal issue. So I've had people find out that they have PCOS when they like couldn't lose weight. So they went to like a dietitian, and like she had her do all this stuff, and she was like, "Your metabolism is, you have some markers, like, have you been tested for PCOS?" And then she
Mhm.
was like, "No." And then that dietitian sends her to go get all this stuff, and then she
Mhm.
finds out that she, it's like, it's so crazy that this isn't like a thing that we just get screened for
Right.
as just like a period.
Absolutely. I mean, and especially if you have higher risks from a genetic component. So I don't necessarily come from a family that has PCOS, but I come from a family that has some huge autoimmune issues.
Mhm.
And so, and they're seeing strong connections between thyroid issues, autoimmune, Hashimoto's. My mother has multiple sclerosis, and I have other family members that have huge, autoimmune conditions. And so it's like, so if you have somebody that has type 2 diabetes in your direct family, or somebody who has autoimmune conditions, thyroid challenges, or insulin issues, like these should be screened way before before you get to that point when you're trying to get pregnant, or when you're about to go in your 30s and you're like, okay, something's different. So
Right.
the earlier, and we know this in healthcare, the earlier you get diagnosed, the earlier that you know about something, the better chances you are that you can manage that for a life, for your life. You talked
Right.
about that, about lifelong commitment to taking care of your PCOS when we talked earlier. Um, how, like, has this kind of mindset, like realizing that you have, this condition that you are going to be managing for the rest of your life, how did that impact you mentally and kind of emotionally? And how have you worked on kind of working through that, or kind of where you are at in that mental journey?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, at first it was really hard. I was really emotional because I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have like facial hair forever." And even if I keep it at bay with like lasers and things of that sort, because I've tried for decades, or for over a decade, and there's just certain things that like will always try to creep back all the time because our bodies is constantly trying to, do its thing. But in reality, like with all the things that we take, with our supplements, with our lifestyle change and everything else, it takes a lot of work. So it was
Mhm.
like that daunting feeling like, oh, I'm gonna have to work twice as hard for the rest of my life for half of the results. Oh my God. Like it's a very daunting feeling. You feel very overwhelmed. You feel very emotional because then you start comparing yourself. Well, I'm the friend that always had to struggle, like all my skinny friends, or all my friends that get periods, all my friends that talk about, when you just like know your body. And I'm like, mm, I don't know my body. I never know when I'm going to have a period. I never know literally anything. It's just like, surprise, hi, I'm here. And it's so crazy because that would have even made me feel like less of a woman. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm not in tune with my body. I have no idea what my body is actually doing. And that's like a really scary feeling because it almost made me feel like I was outside of the club. I was like, dang, like
Mhm.
I'm outside of this club. Like, what are y'all talking about that like your period comes like every 27th, like clockwork? Like, that's kind of wild. But it was scary at first, what I do to cope, but I honestly, I just laugh through it all. Like I laugh at my own pain. That's why I create content that pokes fun, and is very relatable because I know that I'm not the only one
Yeah.
going through these things. So I think finding community was definitely a big thing. And since that wasn't really a thing, and we're all, grassroots right now, you're creating
Mhm.
community, I'm creating, we're all creating little
Yeah.
communities like as we start. But that was my big thing. I was like, I need to find other people like me because I need to like be able to like laugh and cry and get mad about
Right.
certain things, like with people that get it. So
Right.
yeah.
And where's my, you're shining your light so that way your tribe can find you too. And that's really what this is about, is finding community and realizing that we are not alone. We are
Hmm.
not broken. We are not less than women. We're different. There's some research that says that we had some genetic benefits back when, we were in our hunter gatherer days and they were experiencing famine. So, take
Okay.
that. But so I would love to shift gears and just kind of, I mean, we kind of touched on this a little bit about racial disparities in healthcare. And this is a topic that I have, I really started opening my eyes to this. I am not going to deny my white middle class, woman privilege here, and see that, I have had access to healthcare and things like that my whole life. And when I started going through the midwifery process of training to be a midwife, my eyes were opened to the healthcare disparities in terms of women of color and in this country, and it was appalling to me. And I have kind of like made it a part of my mission to bring awareness to this topic and to do whatever I can to bring these voices out to the forefront and say this has got to change. This is not
Right.
okay. So there was an article, I'll mention this and then I would love to hear your feedback. So there was an article that was published in January of 2023. I'll post it in this email in the show notes for you guys. But it's about racial and ethnic disparities in polycystic ovarian syndrome. And basically, it spoke about the different ethnicities and how so women with Hispanic and Mexican descent are higher risk of developing insulin resistance. US Black women are at increased risk of hypertension when compared to white women. Um, Also, Black women with PCOS are increased risk of psychological comorbidities, mental health issues when compared. That, so that literally, guys, I just got goosebumps because this
Wow.
piece right here, I want to talk about this piece, this mental health piece. So
Mhm.
this, if you don't know, for the listeners that don't know, mental health and PCOS are they're starting to see these overlaps huge with depression, anxiety, and other border personality disorder, other like mental health comorbidities. And so we're seeing the evidence is now showing that that Black women are more likely and more at increased risk of having these psychological comorbidities. And this is huge. Let's I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had done a campaign most recently with they're called Vocal Media, and
Mhm.
they work with people like Planned Parenthood to advocate for, different things. And I they wanted me to speak on, this topic in particular, and I learned a lot of stats about it too. And I was just like, I was I was shocked, but I was not surprised because I think that this is all systemic. This trickles down. It's a much bigger picture than we think. Everyone's like, oh, y'all make it a race thing. And it's like, y'all have to think back and back. And if you go
Yeah,
back, you got to back more.
keep
There's
going.
you literally got to keep going because it trickles back to the fact that if you look at where people of color, Hispanics, Black people, Indian, whatever, like they back in the day there was like redlining and redistricting
Mhm.
and
Yes.
everywhere that minorities were, there were never, the higher quality hospitals or healthcare. Like there was just none of that. And that was done on purpose because back then the majority of the people that were in positions of powers were white males.
Mhm.
So everything was always done in their favor, in the favor of people that look like them. And then as racism has not become as big of an issue, it's still an issue, but obviously we're mixed and mingled now. There's people can get married to each other, all that stuff, but that still affects people today because their families. I mean, this is all trickled down. And if we think about how DNA gets passed down and how your surroundings and even how we adapt. That's another thing. I know we talked about this before we even
Yeah,
before this conversation, but I wanted to touch on this. I think it's so
do
important.
it.
If you look at like how interesting it is that a lot of like minority, that there's like a big minority of women that even deal with like the hirsutism, that's like high androgens, right?
Mhm.
Like the high
Yeah.
testosterone, whatever hormones. It's very interesting because those are the types of people that normally come from very rough upbringings
Mhm.
where like your body adapts, right? So like if your body is adapting to be more robust and to be more like you're talking about hunting and gathering like back in the day, like
Yeah.
like where
Yeah.
our bodies were I think our bodies start to like go into flight or fight, and like you have to be strong and you have to like protect yourself, and you think that everyone is like you're not safe because if you go to the doctor they're not really going to advocate for your safety or for your health. Like you have to advocate for yourself. So I can only imagine what that does to our bodies as we have to adapt. And like why is it that so many Indians and Hispanics and Black people, like why is it that so many of them are the ones that struggle with like the higher androgens? I wonder.
These like evidence, that's such an interesting point. I'm literally writing it down because I want to think about that a little bit more about this like adaptation of from an ethnic and a cultural background to be stronger, harder, kind of what we more consider like higher, kind of testosterone or masculine, these
Yeah.
masculine kind of presenting features is like kind of what you're talking about. And like it's I have a very, very strong connection to like energy and also physical manifestations, and that there's a lot more tie here than what we think. So if we have this generational, generation by generation back that has had to be these very, very strong physically you know, almost kind of like I don't know, like just really,
Yeah.
you know, defensive to be able to create security for yourself, then
Yeah.
you also have these male kind of what is considered more masculine features like facial hair or you know kind of a stronger build or you know
Lack of
it's
period.
that's really interesting you
Lack
really
of period. So you're, you're not having to stop your, stop your life every month to like deal with this thing. Like you're just able to go and protect
whoa
yourself. Right. And even like when we're talking about medical disparities and like people of color, like in medical books, in literal medical books, they say that Black people, people of color, have thicker skin, like
Mhm.
physically, like we have thicker skin so that we should be able to withstand pain, which is why so many Black women complain
Pain
about saying that
businesses.
excruciating pain,
Mhm.
and their doctors are just like, oh well, no, you're just exaggerating. Like, no, you're fine, you're fine. They'll give you a little bit of Tylenol or ibuprofen, whatever, and you're good. And it's like that is literally freaking insane. Like I feel pain just like you feel pain.
Right. It
Like,
is that is based off of like such old, you know, research that
yeah,
was like a completely bunk. It's been debunked, but that's the problem. When you have things, right? Like you said, you have to go back. You have to go way back. And so some of these things slip under. Yeah, maybe we don't have as much like forward racism as we did, you know, 70 years ago, but these systems, the, you know, the gerrymandering of the districts, I wrote down food deserts, the even the ability to buy quality food, produce, right? We know for our health and lifestyle, we have to eat better. We have to eat fruits and
right.
vegetables. Processed food affects us differently. Sugar affects us differently. But in food deserts, if you're not familiar with that term, that means basically you live in an area where you do not have access to quality food or even food at all. And because you have, you know, challenges with transportation, with things like that, if you live in a food desert, how are you getting your food? And if you're,
Mhm.
you know, what you go to the convenience store and you pick up a cup of ramen, like because
Yeah.
that's what you have. That's
And
all that's
think
available.
about the people that have to be on food stamps or like help from the government or whatever. Like, they go to the store, and because of the scarcity, and because of they don't have the ability to buy high quality foods, on top of the fact that if you even go to a McDonald's, the salad is like $10, but a Big Mac is $1. So what do you think a
Mhm.
family that struggles financially is going to
Right.
do to feed their three kids? They're going to go to McDonald's and they're going to buy $1 burger. Now you fed your kids from the very beginning, like from childhood. These kids nowadays, they're growing so crazy because there's hormones in all our foods. There's
Yeah.
so much processing. There's so much stuff. And, girls are developing faster. There's so much estrogen. There's so much this, so much that. It's like, why do you think, well, why are you feeding your kids crap? Because they can't afford anything better. And
Yeah.
that's just, that is a manifestation of their circumstance. And there's nothing that they can do about that. They just are doing their best. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, it has lifelong effects on
Yeah.
their children and themselves. There's nothing they could do about that.
Yeah, and it's not this is the problem that we put all of this we put all this responsibility on the people. We say, "Oh, it's your fault. Oh, you're
Mm-hmm.
not taking care of your family. You're not taking care of your health. It's your fault you have type 2 diabetes." And you're like, "No, let's take a step back for a second and see what the system and how this is set up and how this is not just an individual. Yeah, of course, we have individual responsibility. That's not this is but it's bigger than that. It is bigger than that. And when the healthcare kind of industry sometimes, which really frustrates me, like puts all this responsibility back on them instead of like looking and saying, well, what's our part in this? Or you know, from a political governmental standpoint, like what's our part in this? Oh well, you guys, there's a lot of parts here. And so if you're listening and you feel like, you know, maybe this is you, you're like, yes, okay, I have struggled in this part, like know that there are resources out there to help you. And I would love to, maybe this would be something that I was kind of thinking about is like getting these resources so we can have the nutrition support that we need to help with our health. And, you know, like I said, if you're trying to get pregnant, if your fertility is kind of on your mind, you know, there are resources out there. Maybe that's something we can kind of put together to help. That would
Yeah.
be fantastic because I think that this is a really important topic. Whether it's in this summit or not, it'll be here, and so
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
coming. It's coming, and I
Yeah.
love that. So because that's how things happen, is by having honest conversations like this. And that's what this is about. So, well,
Yeah.
I have absolutely loved this conversation. I could talk, like I said, last time we talked, I was like, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff.
Yeah,
And I'm sure we're going to have many other opportunities, but I would
absolutely.
love just kind of one little last word of wisdom for you, for our listeners. What's one thing you would say to a woman with PCOS who is maybe trying to get pregnant that could bring back her joy right now?
Ooh, something that would bring back her joy. I would say something that really helped me was not comparing my journey to anybody else's. A lot of the times we don't, we see that woman having that baby and we don't know what that woman has gone through to get that baby.
Mm,
And in that moment, we may feel feelings of like, misplaced jealousy or envy, like, oh, I want that to be me so bad. But you
mm,
don't know what that woman went through. So in the same way, like, find joy in your journey, like take it a day at a time, listen to your body, and don't compare yourself to anybody else's journey, because woo child, we don't know what people are going through to get to that final thing that they get. Like it looks like a shiny new thing to you, but we don't know the hardships that they did. So
So,
that would be
yes,
my.
thank you so much. That's so beautiful. Yes, coming back to present, coming back and realizing that comparison is really one of the worst things that we could do for ourselves, because everybody is unique and everybody's journey is different. And so I'm just really coming back and having that joy for and gentleness with yourself. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation and sharing your light. Of course, you can find Talia on her socials. I will post those links down here. Sounds like you're on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah,
And she's also got a Facebook group as well. Like I said, I will post all that information so that way you can get a hold of Talia, follow her for all her amazing content of just being real with her sisters, and absolutely love it. Thank you so much for being here today, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
thank you. I'm so honored to be here. You're doing amazing things, and shoot, I cannot wait for this to come out and for me to share. Everybody needs to hear this.
I'm
The
so
more we
excited
share,
to see them all
keep it up.
together. It's so great. So, all right. Well, you have a wonderful day, and listeners, you enjoy your day as well.